Okay, thank you. And everyone, welcome to Narcissistic Domestic Violence Healing and Support Incorporated, our second annual virtual Speak Out and Community Discussion panel. So our first speaker tonight is going to be Tracy Rector. And Tracy is going to speak to us about a number of things. Tracy Rector is a survivor of intimate partner violence who used her experience to raise awareness by making a movie. She served as executive producer for the feature film No Ordinary Love, released early summer 2021 to high acclaim. She recently created the program Project Raise Awareness to take the film to university campuses as a title program, and she also served a Title VI program, and she also served for 7 years on the board of directors, 2 years as board chair for Safe Haven, which is a nonprofit organization in Fort Worth, Texas, the leading domestic violence agency for the area. She also lives near Fort Worth with her loving husband. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and have Tracy Rector go ahead and tell her story.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here and talk to all of you tonight to share our stories and help others speak up about their experience with domestic violence. I see some familiar faces tonight. It's ugly, it's messy, it's complicated, and more than anything else, we know it's wrong. We all know the statistic, 1 in 3 women in their lifetime experience intimate partner violence. And like many of you, I'm the one in that statistic, a victim of abuse. It's been 14 years since I became legally free from my abusive husband. I still get tears in my eyes when I think about what I put my kids and my extended family through trying to make it work. It took me years to realize that I was even in an abusive marriage. I never had bruises. I never had a reason to go to the ER, but it destroyed my self-worth and nearly broke my spirit. And some close to me, as I'm sure some did to you, asked the dreaded questions. Why didn't you just leave? Why did you stay so long? And honestly, I thought domestic violence was violent. I didn't know it was about power and control. I knew my life was hard and my marriage was difficult, but I come from a strong Midwestern stock, which means I'm tough and I don't give up easily. And my faith in my church told me I couldn't leave till death do us part. After 20 years of marriage, I finally reached my breaking point. He was a minister in a large church, and we had an abusive marriage. Being a minister's wife made things worse for 2 reasons. We lived in a glass house with an elephant in the living room, and the abuse was not only mental, emotional, and somewhat physical, it was also spiritual. We walked on eggshells regularly. There were many rules with my abuser, and any defiance was met with immediate rebuke and his self-serving interpretation of scripture. Women were to have long, flowing hair. Every time I got my hair cut, he refused to talk to me for 2 to 3 days of silencing. He read from his Bible that a woman was to have long, flowing hair and tell me my salvation was in jeopardy since I refused to follow God's word. Arguing was not allowed. I was to be happy all the time. When I rebuked his attempts at power and control, he would read Ephesians chapter 5, wives, be subject to your husbands, but he would leave out the part of where husbands were supposed to love their wives as Christ loves the church. He viewed my body as his property. At any time, he would approach me to grope one of my breasts, and he would place his hand on it so hard that he'd have to put his other hand behind my back to keep me from falling over. I always objected, and he would say, "It's okay, we're married," and remind me of Jesus' words in Mark's gospel, "The two shall become one flesh." And to be sure, these examples are just the tip of the iceberg of his abuse, but it was always about power and control. Then one Valentine's Day, he gave me the book titled Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands. He had previously read it and highlighted parts he especially wanted me to pay attention to. And that was the moment I knew that I was never, ever going to be good enough. And once we separated, he began to stalk me. He drove up and down our street. I would find packages from him inside our house, letting me know that he had been there. One day I came home to find him outside the house, and he followed me in, letting me know that in the eyes of God, we were still married and what that meant to him. With my heart pounding, I quickly got in my car and left. First, I called my lawyer to begin the restraining order procedure, and then a locksmith. I look at where I am now, and I don't even know the woman I was before. The abuse made me a different person. I was fortunate enough not to need an emergency shelter or go to the ER, but I could have benefited from hearing more victims like y'all speak out about your experience of abuse to know I wasn't the only one. Today, I'm married to a wonderful man who truly loves me. And from my recent experience serving on the board of the Domestic Violence Agency, I saw an acute need to help victims of abuse. Like y'all, I wanted to use my experience to help others. So many of you have started your own nonprofits to spread the word and support victims. I reached out to a young filmmaker named China Robinson, and we jumped feet first into an adventure of a lifetime. We made an independent feature film called No Ordinary Love, with the idea of raising awareness of domestic violence. I tasked China with writing the script to be authentic. This was really important to me that we got it right. It wasn't the typical Hollywood version of what domestic violence is. And I also asked her to include spiritual abuse, since that was such an important part of my abuse. Her research included interviewing 20 women living in the emergency shelter. She attended court-mandated classes with offenders, and she witnessed a DV homicide trial, in addition to jumping deep into the statistics. We hit the film festival circuit, picking up awards along the way. And in the festival towns before COVID hit, we connected with local DV agencies to partner with them to use the film to help raise awareness in their community. And I know one of Teresa's friends is Lisa Alexander with Stand Up Survivor, and we connected with her when we were in Orlando, and we are still big supporters of her today. No Ordinary Love began streaming online this summer, and USA Today calls it one of the biggest summer movies. So we're really excited about that. I now have an opportunity to use the film to raise awareness with the highest risk age group. I created the program called Project #Raise Awareness to take the film to college campuses as a Title IX program. Title IX program is something that colleges have to adhere to if they're going to receive federal funding. So that's what that's about. So the universities can show the film, followed by a guided Q&A panel with university staff. We had several colleges booked for October, but COVID resurgent made us reschedule all of those for the spring. We also offer the film to DV agencies to use as an educational tool. And you can find us at noordinarylovemovie.com or email me at tracy.rector@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media to keep up with what we're doing on the film. And I encourage all survivors to speak up and tell their story when they are ready to, so that we can bring this much needed conversation out of the shadows and into the light, where it can be exposed to the scrutiny it deserves. I look forward to hearing all of your stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, for sharing so much. Thank you so much. You did a wonderful job. And we are going to move on. We're going to move on to Amina Anthony. Amina Anthony is a wife, a mother, a life coach, advocate, and also a survivor of narcissistic abuse. Amina also is a clinical mental health counselor specializing in cluster B personality disorders, trauma and crisis, and family, marriage, and relationship counseling. She has lived and survived the toxic cycle of idealizing, devaluing, discarding, and hoovering. And she enjoys general clients. However, her passion really lies in seeing survivors of narcissistic abuse thrive in life and heal. She is a life coach who focuses on the survivors of narcissistic abuse, breaking trauma bonds, and healing childhood wounds in order for clients to regain control of their life. Her passion is to educate, advocate, and help others heal. So please welcome Amina Anthony. Okay, just one moment. I think Amina's still on mute. Go ahead.
I am so sorry. I want to say I wanted to correct something in my bio. I am actually a clinical mental health counselor student and will be finishing soon. But thank you so much for this opportunity. My story is very similar to Tracy's, and I'm sure all of the people on all of the ladies, I'm not sure if it's any men on the panel who have experienced domestic violence. I was in a 6-year situation that was very traumatizing to myself, my children, my family, and ultimately my community, because I am part of the community. So after getting out of that situation, I promised myself, my children, God, my friends and my family that I will do whatever I can to educate my community and to help women like me heal and advocate for us. Because as Tracy said, I felt like I was the only one in the world who had ever experienced something like this. I thought that I was losing my mind. I thought that I was dying, to be honest with you. And so with that being said, I decided to go for my second master's in clinical mental health counseling, concentrating on cluster B personality disorders. And for me, instead of going and studying the narcissist, I decided to study so I could then help educate the survivors, right? And so that is what my life coaching is about. That is what my passion and my purpose is about, is to educate more people on these disorders, because it's destroying people every day. It is destroying our community. It's destroying people's lives. And so to do my part to help heal the world, one client, one person at a time, is what brought me on this panel, is what took me back to school after, oh God, I think 12 years, and ultimately what has helped me start my business. So that's it. I am a survivor. I am a believer that it is my duty. It is my purpose, one of my purposes, to educate through my pain and my trauma. So thank you so much for inviting me on this panel. And I truly do appreciate what you're doing. This is amazing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Coach Amina. And thank you. And we're going to have our next guest is Donna Lambert. She actually is the author. She is the co-author of the book, My Secret Life, My Journey Through Domestic Violence, which she is a co-author with several authors on that book. And joining us now is Donna Lambert.
Am I up next? I cannot hear anything.
Can you hear now? Because we can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My everything just took a dive. Sorry. Trying to get this right. Okay. It'll be okay. I'm up.
Yep. Go ahead. We can hear you.
A hard time hearing. Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Marie Lambert, and thank you for Teresa for asking me to speak again. It's my second time, and it definitely is an honor to be asked to speak, about my story, my life, and just want to share, I am a survivor of domestic violence for about 13, 14 years. survivor of sexual abuse for 11 years. I was in 3 domestic violence relationships, 3. My first husband, 9 years. The next one, about 3 years. And then the final one in 2007, about 5 years, 5 or so years. So what I really want to say for myself is that there were red flags in all 3. I paid no attention to them. I was in love, so I thought, and I guess I thought love was being smacked around because I was hit, even before the marriages happened. I was controlled before the marriages ever occurred. But I grew up in a domestic violence household. So that's pretty much what I knew. I thought it was normal for a man to hit their woman and put her in place. Like, that's just seemed like the norm for me. So in my first marriage of 9 years, I have 3 children, and it was bad. It was no worse than anybody else's on here, but it's my story, right? And it was just really, really very violent, to the point of almost being thrown off a balcony, being kicked up and down blocks, and being beaten down steps, being stomped when you're about due to have my 3rd child. It was a horrible situation. And what I find most important is that I'll use myself, when I didn't I got therapy, I went to support groups, but I didn't continue on in the healing process. And that's how I ended up in the other relationships, because I didn't heal. And I think that even today it's a process, of healing. And therapy is very important. And I'm grateful today that I did seek therapy and that I did stop. After 2007, I said, all right, this is enough. I was like, am I wearing a badge on my forehead? I just literally knew I wore something across here. It's almost like I would see it, because I was like, it has to say abuse me, just abuse me, because I started to think that it was all my fault. Like, because I keep getting into these relationships, so it had to be me. It couldn't be them. It had to be me. Although I've never raised a hand at them, I've never abused them in any way, financially, emotionally, mentally, physically, ever. So, I really thought it was my fault for many, many years. And for me, I had to stop and get therapy, go to self-help groups, and get to know who Donna was, because I didn't know who I was. The only person I knew that I was the person to be beat up. That's the only Donna that I knew. And so it's been a journey, and it's been a wonderful journey, actually. And, it's been many gifts from it, like learning how to forgive no matter what. And that's been my gift, like to actually forgive people for doing wrong to me, and literally really forgiving them has been very important and vital in my life. And I'm so grateful that I did, because it's been many more abuses as well, but I'm just focusing on them 3. But, two of them died, and I was grateful that I was able to forgive them and have a conversation with them, even though they may not have. One apologized. My stepfather, for molesting me, he never did. He never admitted to it or anything. And that was okay, because I had found peace in myself with the whole situation, and I was able to forgive him. And I'm just grateful for the peace that I have today. I met Teresa. Well, we, co-authored, the book last year. That was amazing. I never thought, I always wanted to, but I never thought that I would actually contribute to a book as such. It's so dynamic, with the stories of the women in here. And that's where the connections come in. And we find strength. I find strength from all of you here. And I'm able to, move on. And so today I volunteer for the YWCA as an assistant, like an advocate. When we have the support group meetings, I assist her, I help her out. And I get so much from it because it keeps me reminded of the red flags. It keeps me reminded of where I was when I see the new people coming. And to be a help is really, 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 really good when you could be a help to other people that are where you used to be, and you can encourage them. So today, that's what I do. I lead a self-help group on Facebook called Donna's Beauty Retreat. And, we just talk about confidence and self-help, self-love, and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you, Teresa, for asking me to speak again. And thank you for allowing me to continue to find my voice. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna. You did an awesome job. Thank you. Okay, and we're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Patricia Fowler. Patricia Fowler is a certified advocate, board certified Christian counselor, an author, a minister of the gospel, and also a speaker. She is the founder of Pure Heart Advocacy, LLC, which is a business that is designed to touch the heart of others by helping young girls and women who have and/or are currently struggling with abuse, and to educate and bring awareness to the community, church, schools, and anywhere regarding domestic violence. Patricia speaks on her past experience with domestic violence in hope of helping other women to feel free to speak on their situations, to get out and help before it is too late. Patricia is a 4-time author with 2 of her co-authored books focused on her journey with domestic violence. She became a first-time author in December of 2017 with her first inspirational self-help book titled Strength in Her Struggles. Patricia believes that until we speak on and go after what we want and what we need in our lives, that we keep ourselves in a life of complacency. She helps others to see what God wanted nothing more for us than to live an abundant life. So everyone, please welcome Patricia as our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. This is my second year as well, and I'm thankful that you came back for me again. And just hearing the other women so far, it is funny, but it's not funny that we all kind of have the same story. It may be a little different here, a little difference there. Mine was through my 10-year marriage, and I don't regret it because I wouldn't have my 3 sons or my grandkids. What I did learn from it, just like I believe Donna said, I thought that that's what you're supposed to accept it if it's your husband. That's what I was told. I didn't know no different. I saw my mom go through some things and it was her husband. So to me, okay, I seen my mom do it. So then when it happened to me, I'm figuring that that's how it's supposed to be. Although I knew I didn't like it and I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know what to do about it. I had never heard anyone talk about domestic violence. I hadn't seen it or anything. And so it wasn't until I've been out now for maybe 20 years or so, but I didn't start speaking until 2014 was the first time I actually spoke at my previous church at I think it was Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and they asked me to speak, and that started my journey speaking up till today. This year I started LLC in January, and I actually just rebranded it. The name is Pure Heart Advocacy and Awareness LLC because my focus is more on education and awareness because so many people are clueless about domestic violence, what it is, what to do, who to call, who to tell. what to do after, how do you get out? So I feel like I'm obligated to help women, any women, and not just women, men too, because men go through it as well. I don't leave them out, but it's more so for me, the women and children, to make sure whether they're a survivor, a victim, whether they're trying to get out, make sure they know what they need to do. You know, as far as you just can't leave. You got to make sure you have all your important papers, your kids' papers for school, or your bank information, you know, duplicate keys, get a PO box, get a prepaid debit card so you have money to use when you get out, get a bag packed with clothing and leave it somewhere with somebody you trust. So when you do leave, if you leave like on the spur of the moment, when I left with nothing. Just got my sons and left and went to my mom's house and basically had to start all over because I didn't want to go back for my things. So I just started over. But I think it's so important, and that's why I'm going to be teaching classes on domestic violence and sexual assault. I actually have just partnered with Axe Shelter in Prince William County where I live, and Bethany House of Northern Virginia. And I'm doing a fundraiser for both of those organizations for Thanksgiving and Christmas to raise money and donations of items for the women and children that are there who have been abused. It's 20 kids. I'm not sure how many women it is, 6 families, but it's 20 kids. And all of them except for one are under 10, which I just think is really sad. So my focus is just to continue speaking. On the first, I spoke on the steps at the Capitol, and we had several people come up and share their stories. One young lady, I believe she was Muslim and Arab mixed or something of that nature. And she said they are taught when the man, or I guess she was speaking of her mom, when her dad puts her mom down or curses her out and berates her and all that, she said they are taught to accept that. And that is just so sad. It's so sad that people at young ages are dealing with that. So I will continue to speak as long as I'm alive, as long as I can, to whoever will listen. I'm working on my next book. And I just want everyone to know to keep telling your story. Some people may say, well, I heard her story before. Okay, you know what? You're going to hear it again too. You're going to hear it again. As long as I keep hearing this woman was killed today because of domestic violence, murder, suicide, child was killed, you're going to keep hearing my story. She went through domestic violence through her marriage and all that. She left. Yep, same story, same story. You're going to keep hearing it until I stop hearing about it. So I encourage everyone, continue sharing. We need to continue to connect with one another because together we are more powerful than one of us alone. So Ms. Teresa, I thank you again for having me again this year and look forward to next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for, you did an awesome job, Patricia. And I also want to thank everyone who has come on today because you all are really amazing set of women. You all are accomplished, wonderful, amazing set of women. Okay, so we are going to move on to our next speaker, Ebony Smith. Ebony, are you ready to speak right now? Okay, I think she might have stepped away. So we'll come back to her. And we're going to move on to Ashley Merrick. So thank you for coming on, Ashley, for speaking today. Go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, I can't hear. It just kind of like glitched. Okay. Hello, guys. My name is Ashley Merrick, and this will be my first time ever speaking to anyone about my experience, but I'm 24. I'm from West Virginia. I'm currently starting to aspire in being an author. I'm a full full-time mother of 4 children. I met my abuser when I was 17 years old. And needless to say, a lot of people hasn't heard of a lot of these online situations, but we easily connected over Facebook. I was a depressed teenager, and much of my school life was full of bullies. I didn't come from the most amazing home, but I did have a loving family who I'd had differences with. I was vulnerable and thought I knew what love was after a recent breakup that caused many emotional issues. My abuser and I talked a little while consistently and came up with a plan. He had convinced me, which should have been a red flag automatically, to tell my parents that he came from my hometown. And he had just turned 18 or 19. And I thought I was on the fast track to being a woman. I thought I knew what that was. I dropped out of school a few months prior. So at this point, I thought I was living my best life. And my father started to notice me, and the guy was getting really close. And in fear that I'd move hours away, my dad made an abrupt decision to let the guy move in with me. As this man moved in, things were good. And then my father started noticing things that I didn't. And I figured it was just my dad being a dad. My boyfriend got a job, and we started to sleep in the same room. And after a few weeks, at this point, he had already coached me into sexual relations and was continuing the urgency to continue that. Me and my dad had numerous occasions we would disagree, and my boyfriend started using those to play me against my family. This led to heavier disagreements and a tension built up. Soon my boyfriend had asked me to marry him, and I said yes, because I thought I knew what love was. And then the tensions exploded over an argument weeks later. My dad was kicking my fiance out, and I decided to run away. Police became involved and sent me home and separated me and my dad for a bit. I went to live with my aunt, and with hesitation, my dad allowed me to go live with my fiance. I moved a few hours away, and then a few weeks later, tensions had built up with his family. He got into an altercation with his family, and they kicked us out. So we were moved back in with my aunt. That should have been an automatic red flag to me too. As things continued, I got pregnant. I found out 3 days before I turned 18, and I was having my first child. And we decided to move back in with his family. He started pursuing for, well, I'll put it this way. It was a lot of sexual abuse. He would try to coerce me to do things in public. And it was just a lot of emotional abuse that went with it. My entire pregnancy, he treated me horribly. He would joke about cheating on me and call me crazy and gaslight me. I had my daughter a few months after he started accusing me of cheating. And then that led to the first altercation as to where he physically put his hands on me, and he started pulling my hair and choking me. Several times I went through more sexual abuse, and he raped me, and I became pregnant with my son. This is a hard thing for me to talk about, so I apologize. But with a lot of that going on, and I became pregnant again, I decided to keep the baby. But to much attention and attentiveness, he didn't claim our child. And I was abused my entire pregnancy and literally beat into labor. On July 9th, 2018, we had a very harsh argument about me not wanting to wake our kids in the middle of the night to walk on the side of town that was a bad side of town to see his mom. I decided I would not go, and this ended in a violent attack in front of our 2-year-old daughter. This very night, he pulled a gun on me, and something clicked. I was going to die if I didn't leave. I played along, and I apologized. I offered him anything that he wanted in hopes that he wouldn't kill me. And when he allowed me a few minutes to myself, I called my parents and told them I needed them to come and get me the next day. On July 9th, I waited until he went to work, and I had my parents come get me. And like the person before me had said, I didn't have a plan, but I packed what I could and I grabbed my 2 kids and I left. I was 5 hours away from where I was originally from. And on July 10th, 2018, I filed a complaint with MPD, Martinsburg Police Department, and rushed out of town with 2 kids. And I never ever looked back again. And I never ever will. I've literally clawed my way from rock bottom, and I started working directly after leaving and ended up in school and trying to make something of myself. I was raising 2 kids on my own and pushed myself. I ended up shortly divorcing him and have been divorced since December of 2018. I ended my relationship with my family, and in 2020, I ended up getting pregnant with twins and having twins. So now I have 4 kids, and I've worked on everything I have now. I've managed to get my license and my car since leaving him. I've rented my first place basically by myself as of last year, and I'm surviving without him. Many days I struggle with mental scars, but me and my little family are safe now, and I'm grateful. My main purpose of speaking out about this is because I want young girls out there to know that there are so many things that happen in this world, but don't let domestic violence get you down to the point where you think that that man is all you have, because you have so much more.
All right. Yes.
Yes, what a lovely way to end that. You did a great job, Ashley. Wonderful way to end that. Great job. Okay, and we are going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker, she has truly an amazing story. I was actually basically allowed to witness her story, more or less. She joined our NDV Healing Support groups, and I watched her grow as she went through our support groups, and she's just really amazing. So I want to welcome Stephanie Culpepper. She's going to talk and tell her story. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I just want to say I love hearing your guys' stories. It is absolutely, truly amazing. Stay still. Sorry, he got his flu shot today. He's super needy, very clingy. He's actually part of the story too. So I met my abuser in August of 2018, and it was the fairy tale from the get-go. It was the future planning and making me feel high and mighty and this beautiful woman. And we moved in quickly. There was a lot of verbal arguments at first. And I thought, well, most couples argue. It's normal. You know, that's how you break down the layers. Chill, baby. Sorry. And I got pregnant. I got pregnant in December of 2018 with this little one right here. And the second I got pregnant, the abuse turned physical. He hadn't been physically abusive until I was responsible for this tiny one. It got to where he was punching me in the stomach. He was punching me in the legs. He was choking me until I would pass out. And at one point, he even told me I would just stop if that thing wasn't growing inside of you. And it to me, this is my tiny soul. This is my little man. And that should have been my red flag. That should have been the get out card. He had warrants, and I convinced him to turn himself in so that we could have a quote unquote normal life. And please stop. And that should have also been my get out card. And he made me believe he had changed, that he was doing anger management, that he was getting better. but the abuse had stopped. My pregnancy was going really, really, really well. And sorry, I'm trying to turn on this Baby Shark song. He gets out of jail and things were pretty good. I go into labor 3 days later, and it was just terrible. He wouldn't let me have my mother in the delivery room. He wouldn't let me lay comfortably in my hospital bed. And I even had a nurse ask me, Stephanie, do you need help? Do you need to get out? Mm-hmm. And what did I say? I said, no. He's under a lot of stress. He's scared about the baby. He's scared to be a dad. I made excuses for him. And this is the first time I share my story. Sorry, guys. My son is born. And things are great. So I thought. And one night, he went to put my son in the bassinet, and he dropped him into it. My son was hours old, and he was abusing my son. We get home, things are okay the first couple of weeks, and newborns cry. They're hungry, they're tired. That's how they communicate. They don't know how to tell you verbally yet. They just know to cry. And he didn't like that. He would start tying my son up in blankets. And when I would untie him, he would take these two fingers on my left hand and dislocate them. Never the right hand, because if something was wrong with that, someone would know. Excuse me. He dislocated my arm because I was trying to get to my son who was crying. So at 6 weeks old, I got away. My son and I got away. I had found out he was talking to another girl. And my son and I get away after a big, big fight with Colton and I. And I give my son a bath that night, and I noticed that his legs weren't quite right. And so I take him to the hospital, the emergency room, and they did an x-ray. He had multiple fractures. And so they told me it was rickets. I believed it. I was very impressionable, very naive about domestic violence and child abuse. And the hospitals have to report it. So that was a Saturday. Monday morning, CPS shows up. I had gone back to my abuser. He'd smooth talked me back. And CPS showed up. They said that Bentley needed to go to a specific doctor, child advocacy doctor. And so I take him to the doctor Tuesday morning. They took him back for x-rays, and my son was taken into custody, protective custody. And with all of the abuse, it was more verbal with my abuser, but abuse is abuse. And he made me feel stupid because I was upset that my son had been taken into custody. I ended up getting arrested on old warrants about a week and a half later, and that's what got me away from him. He left the state, went to be with another girl, which was fine. It was a blessing in disguise, but it took me a long time to heal. I found Teresa. I found NDV. I found that the county had put me in different services for my son, multiple therapies, anger management, drug and alcohol, excuse me. And so my son just turned 2 years old last month. And I just got placement with him on the 14th. So he is home with me. Dad's not in the picture, thank God. but now I'm working on getting into your guys' field, or into domestic violence field and child abuse field, to advocate for the ones who can't speak up or won't speak up because they're scared. It is absolutely terrifying. Mm-hmm. I felt so alone, even though his paternal grandmother is a domestic violence advocate. I was so scared. Mm-hmm. And her and I have started building a relationship and bonding. I blamed her for a little bit because she knew. She saw my bruises. She saw my son's bruises. And but she told me, she said, I didn't see it. She said, you know, she knew how it felt. And so I told her, so I'm not angry, I'm just hurt to have a sister out there who knows domestic violence and not say, hey, something's going on. And so I felt so alone. And so I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate this group. I appreciate the amazing friends I have made through it. You guys have all been a tremendous support in my healing and my son's healing. But we're doing good. There is life after domestic violence. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like it. You know, I feel like I start finally coming up for air, and then I get, you know, another tidal wave. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting past it. It just, you got to ride the waves, is all I can say.
It takes time.
It takes time. Learn how to kick them feet and fight.
It takes years.
It takes years. I have been out almost 2 years and I'm still working on my healing.
See, you fresh. You
I'm a baby.
Yeah, you fresh with it.
Oh. But you know, my son and I, we got away from the monster. And
yes.
So we'll have an amazing testimony one day.
You have one now.
No, you already do. You already do.
Yeah. So thank you guys for letting me share. Thank you, Teresa. I feel honored to do it through your group for how much it's given to me. I believe in giving back. So thank you.
Stephanie, I always say that our children are our guardian angels. When we can't leave or fight for, they're our reminder. That's your blessing. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was an amazing story of, it's really shows how you triumph through domestic violence. You really showed how you went and triumphed through that. So thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we are going on to our next speaker without further ado, Tisha Dolby, and she is coming to us from Power, Passion, and Purpose Incorporated, nonprofit organization. So thank you, Tisha, very much for joining us. We are love to have you. Thank you, Tisha.
Hello, ladies. How are you guys doing this evening? Thanks again for inviting me, Teresa. We did this last year, and I was blessed once I seen the email come in again this year, asking me to be a part of the panel once again. I am really encouraged by you ladies. Stephanie, I remember your journey, and I just want to encourage you and love on you for a minute before I even go into mine. You may not see the light at the end of the tunnel, but just keep breathing, keep putting one step in front of the other, and allow people to hold space for you. And we are a part of that circle. We are a part of your tribe. It's a tribe that no one really wants to be a part of. But once you're in it, it's a support, it's a sisterhood, a brotherhood that nobody quite knows it like we do, you know. So I just wanted to say that, and love on that baby. Love on that baby. He will be your strength on them days that you cannot breathe, on them days that you cannot see. He will. He will. If you let him. That's the key part. You have to be willing to let him. So I once again want to say I am the founder, executive director of Power, Passion, and Purpose, Inc. It is a faith-based nonprofit where I work with women who've endured trauma, helping them heal from the inside out. I specifically work with DV, but my organization is designed around my life. I am a survivor, overcomer of child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, and loss of a child. So this month is really, really heavy for me. It's really, really jam-packed. And my daughter that I lost, her birthday's this month. She would have been 27 on the 17th. And, you know, so there's a lot there. And I tell people my survivor story is very, very unique. Thank you for the hugs, Tracy. Unique because I was born into my situation. You know, abuse started very, very early. I was born to a teen mom. My mother was 14 when she got pregnant and 15 when she had me. She was the youngest girl of 3, and everybody had children. My grandmother was an alcoholic. Her father was absent. My father's side of the family, there was addiction and an absent father. So I was born into brokenness. I was fighting a losing battle from the time I got here, and it got worse. And I ended up being, let's see, it's hard to talk about my abuser without talking about how I started in abuse, because domestic violence is cyclical. And like everyone else has said, it was normalized, arguing, fighting. I grew up with a man throwing me across the room. I grew up being beat on. I grew up with finances being withdrawn. I grew up as a teenager with my first job having to pay to live at home when I wasn't caught up in the system. You know, the system did not work for me. That's why I'm telling you, Stephanie, hold on to that baby, because the system kept putting me back into the abuse until I aged out. And then my sexual assault was at a family member's hand. And the only thing to save that was I got pregnant with my first child, to end up in my first adult domestic violence relationship. And I think it was Tracy, I want to say. It took you 3? Who had 3 relationships? Oh, Donna. Sorry, Donna. It was 3. It was 4 for me. It was 4 adult domestic violence relationships to break that cycle. And my first abuser, we got pregnant early on. But God's grace and mercy allowed me to know I was pregnant, because when I lost my daughter, my birthday's August 1st, I found out I was pregnant with my second child, my first adult abuser's child. And a week later, she passed away. So August 1st is my birthday, found out I was pregnant that week and lost my daughter on the 13th. So we played that roller coaster back and forth for 5 years. I was with him for 5 years before I got completely out. And the stalking happened. He used to watch who came in and out my house. He used to threaten me. He used to call me. He used to show up on a job, all of that. Went through all of that. And fast forward, the next 3 wasn't much better. When I was pregnant with my youngest 2 girls are Irish twins. They're 11 months apart. And I always have my own place. And I feel like one of the biggest things that I stress to women is don't let them move in. Don't let them move in. That was my biggest problem, because once they're in, it's hard to get them out. Once they're in, you're in the bottom of this pit. And I secluded myself because of the abuse growing up, so nobody could get to me. So I didn't really have a way out. And When I found out I was pregnant with my youngest, I told God, I said, my picker is off. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I grew up saying, I'm not going to be like my mother. I'm not going to be like my mother. And it took 4 to break that cycle. It took 4 for me to say enough is enough and really focus on healing, growing, and becoming what I was never given. And that's the story behind my nonprofit. Everything that I became is what I do. I do workshops, I do self-love, we do pamper me's, we do. When I say I hold space for women and men, because I have some men I work with as well, I don't leave them out, but we talk about triggers, we talk about response and react, we do all of this. And I don't age nobody out of my organization. Once you're connected to me, you're connected to me for life. Because for me, my adult relationships didn't look like the abuse that I endured as a child. Each one of them men presented something different. So if I can encourage anyone, is to learn what your triggers are. But to learn what your triggers are, you have to acknowledge that something is wrong. We have to acknowledge something is off in order to do something different. You don't have to know what's next. You just know and make a choice that I choose me. I choose me today. I choose to love me. And I get to determine what that looks like. And we can help you figure out the rest. So I just am honored to share this panel with you guys again this year. And as long as time permits and as long as I'm being invited, I will be a part of this panel. And anything anyone else has going on, because I believe in cross collaboration. We can't do this alone. We cannot. We can't stop this alone. And the more of us that stand up and say, no, this is the truth, this is the reality, this is what's going on. I'm tired of losing women. I'm tired of losing children. I'm tired of losing men. I'm tired of domestic violence being brushed under the rug like it doesn't exist. And it leads to so much mental illness. A lot of people are reacting. I call them adult temper tantrums. That's where alcoholism, addiction, repeat offenders, and even our abusers, because all of my abusers were abused. Every last one of them were abused. So I love you guys, and I look forward to the discussion part.
Thank you so much. That was another amazing testimony. You guys are some very awesome ladies. Great testimony. Thank you, Tisha. And our next speaker is Nikki Davis. She is a board member for NDV Healing Support Incorporated, and she is also the founder of Survivors Overcoming Abusive Partners organization. So thank you, and go ahead, Nikki, and take it away.
Hello, everyone. It is so empowering to do this every year and listen to the stories, see where everyone has come from. I have been a survivor of abuse for almost 7 years. And I too had 2 abusive relationships, 2 adult abusive relationships. So it seems like there's a lot of people who have had multiple abusive relationships. And it's very easy to fall back into those relationships when you don't have the proper therapy to figure out what it is going on within us that is causing us to pick these individuals. Some of us have scars that date back to childhood. Some of us have other, issues going on. And I just want to say, if you are being abused, you're not alone. Look at this and see how many strong women came and stood up and told their stories today. How many of us there are out here who are resilient. You have to be a strong individual to be able to break from an abusive relationship and take your children and move forward with your life and figure it out, even though you're emotionally broken and you're trauma bonded to your abuser. To get through it and move past it and be able to move forward is just, you have to be so strong to do that. So you are not alone. And just because you're going through abuse, it does not make you a weak person. It makes you strong that you figured out how to survive it. Now figure out how to survive without them. I've told my story many, many times with both of my abusive situations. The most popular one is the one with my son's father, because we ended up going through a custody battle. And that was kind of where I found out that I needed to say something as far as trying to get awareness, because he was utilizing the system to still have some kind of control over me by filing for custody of my son after I had been free from him for 5 years. And I started having nightmares again. You know, and I was like, why am I having nightmares? You know, I know that I'm not in danger. I know that this man can't get to where I live at. And that was things that was said to me in court. Well, you're not in danger. He can't hurt you. And it was almost insulting to me. So it made me realize, even after being freed from these abusers, it's like our justice system doesn't take it seriously. They think that it's laughable. They think that what we went through is lightly. And it's like, this person could have killed me. So I think that it's amazing that we're taking this stand. We're moving forward. We're making awareness, and we're trying to get better laws, better self-defense laws. And it's not just the justice system as far as, you know, locking them up when they abuse us. It's also the judicial system when it comes to custody of our children, and how when an abuser has rights to a child, they have rights to a child, but until they hurt that child, it's not taken seriously as far as, you know, what is going on or how that person is or how their behavior is. And we won't see any changes, and we won't be able to get anything done about this unless we speak up. And that's what this whole event is about, us speaking up and telling our stories and showing that this is not a situation to be taken lightly. We have lost way too many people. I know that, you know, there are few famous or, you know, cases that are, you know, highlighted every year or every other year, but there are hundreds to thousands of women who perish in the world at the hands of domestic violence. And typically the abuser either kills the children and themselves as well. And none of those are being highlighted. None of those are being like, hey, this is an epidemic. This is something that's happening. It's almost as if the media tries to push it to the side, because over the past decades and decades of years, domestic violence was never even talked about. It was something that you went through in your relationship that was supposed to be kept a secret and kept under wraps. It's only so recently that we started speaking out about it. And that's what we have to do to continue to see change and to continue to get people in office who can make those changes. Unless we do that, nothing is done. So I just want to thank every single person who spoke tonight, every single person that's watched this and shared this video and who takes this seriously, because you're part of the solution. And that's exactly what we need in order to see change. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Nikki. First and foremost, thank you. That was really a powerful testimony. And then also, I'm looking forward to see what you have to say on the discussion portion as well, because I know you love to talk about the laws and you know what needs to be changed as well. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I love talking in general.
And last but not least, before we get into the discussion portion of the event, our last speaker for the night will be none other than myself. Last year, we actually ran out of time, so I didn't get to speak at last year's event, but I am the last speaker for tonight. So I am Teresa Simon, Executive Director and founder of Narcissistic Domestic Violence Healing and Support Incorporated, nonprofit organization. I am also the co-author along with Tracy Rector, who's on here, and Donna Lambert as well, of My Secret Life, My Journey Through Domestic Violence. So I also share my story in there as well. My story actually starts off in where a lot of domestic violence survivor story starts, in childhood. It starts with my relationship with my father. There was actually, I did not learn this until much later in life. And that's why I always stress that therapy is important, because not only does it help with your healing process, but it also helps you learn a lot of things that you may have not known, and helps you get to the root of the problem. So once I did start therapy, I learned a lot about my childhood. So it does start, my story starts in childhood with my father. There was a trauma bond there with my father that I didn't learn until I became an adult. And so for those of you who are just watching us, because I know our audience, we have audience from all over that will be watching this, a trauma bond occurs when the abuser alternates between creating highs and lows in the relationship, and they offer reward and punishment as they deem fit. And they will train the victim that happiness is solely dependent on how well they can serve and please the abuser. And this bond can outlive the relationship. So that's very important to note. And leaving the victim craving comfort from the person that hurt them. So my first trauma bond was created with my father, which when it's created with a parent, it's usually the child experiences abuse and rejection. Plus love. They have that piece where they have abuse, rejection, and love going on. And that's exactly what was going on with my father. And then the child associates love with the abuse. And then the child tends to learn to shut down their feelings, and they withdraw and they blame themselves when bad things happen. Then when they become an adult, they get into a similar relationship with an abuser. And that's where they're having that abuse and rejection and love, again, that trauma bond, and then they're shutting down their wants and their needs for their abuser, or their partner's wants and needs. And so that's exactly what happened to me. When I became an adult, right after high school, I graduated and I went off to college. I actually went off to college away from where I was. I did that intentionally, thinking I was kind of getting away from that family dynamic. But I didn't know, again, I didn't know at the time I was suffering from a trauma bond. So I didn't end up getting away from that family dynamic. I didn't really know what was pulling me back, so to speak, and what was going on with me, that sort of turmoil that I was dealing with. So then fast forward, not too long after that, I get into my first abusive relationship, because I didn't understand what was going on. And then I ended up having 3 children with my abuser. And then that I did end up getting out of that abusive relationship, but I did not seek any therapy. So this is why I'm a huge advocate of therapy. But I thought I was healed, so to speak, because I was out of the relationship and I had moved on. So in my mind, I was healed. I put the quotation marks on that, healed. So then fast forward 10 years later, I've gone on with my life, doing, things on my career, raising children, so to speak. And again, no therapy, no inner work. I get into another relationship, and once again, another abusive relationship. So it's my second abusive relationship, because I thought I was healed. So that relationship ends. I get out of that relationship, and finally I began the journey to therapy and doing inner work and getting to the root of the problem. And it is there I learned about the trauma bonds and how I was trauma bonded. And then eventually I become the founder of the nonprofit NDV Healing Support Incorporated. I started support groups through that nonprofit, and now I am a domestic violence and narcissist abuse advocate, and I just work to really help others so that number one, they don't feel like they're alone, but also that they know, and they learn the things that I didn't know back when I was first going through that. Because when I was first going through that, I thought I was alone. I thought that there really wasn't anyone I could go to. And I just really didn't understand a lot of the things that were going on. So if I had known the things that I know then that I know now. So, it is really truly my passion to help other people that are experiencing the same thing. So that is my story in a nutshell. So thank you all for being on this platform. So now we're going to actually get into the discussion portion of the event. And so our first couple questions about with the discussion questions, and anyone can answer these for the discussion panel. What was your breaking point where you decided that you were going to leave, and did the violence continue or escalate after you left? And anyone can take those questions.
I'll answer first. The point I knew I had to leave was one day we were physically fighting, and he had pinned me against the wall, choking me. And I was able to get to the phone and call the police. I called the police and told them what was going on and gave them our address. But then he pulled the phone out the wall, like before they could ask me any questions or anything. And, you know, normally, like if a kid or anybody dialed 911 and then hang up, they would normally call back and say, you know, somebody just called 911, is everything okay? Or somebody would come out. Nobody called back and nobody came. And I realized that day that probably either he's going to kill me or I'm going to kill him, because I'm not going to leave my kids behind. And I didn't know how I was going to get out. I didn't have no plan. I just know one day when I came home from work and his sisters used to watch my kids, I got the kids and I left. And I never looked back. And even though I saw him after that, I still didn't tell him we was done. Like I gave him some off the wall story of I needed space and then we was gonna get a whole new place and all this, but we already had a place. We were living together. It was no need for a new place, but he didn't get that. But I knew I had to do something to get away because it had already started affecting my kids. I had 3 sons with him, but I had a daughter when I met him, and she, I think from the first instance of abuse, she went and stayed with my mom. So she didn't even want to be around. That should have been a sign to me right there, but it wasn't. But I knew I had to get out or it's going to be him or me. And they say, you better get them before they get you. So I'm just grateful that that day I just said, you know, and when you think you're in love with somebody, you know, you don't want it to be over. You know, my first marriage, I was young and I was like, I don't really want to get divorced and all that. But I was like, I know if he killed me, what's going to happen to my kids? And that was my main focus. That's all I could think about, what's going to happen to them, because he was already making the boys fight each other to make them tough. One of my sons was real tough, and one wasn't, because one was a twin and one of the twins died while I was pregnant. So he was, I don't know if he had emotional problems or what, but he was a crier. He used to cry all the time, but he used to make them fight, you know, to make the one that used to cry tough, which it didn't work. But I'm like, you don't put them against each other. You put them together against somebody coming against them. So even in seeing that, I knew they wasn't going to be treated right. So I was just like, I got to do what I got to do. And my mom, I hadn't even spoken to her in 2 years because he had me isolated from everybody and anybody. So, but she took me in with no problems, no questions, whatever. She never questioned me anyway. She knew I was going through something because she knew I smiled all the time. And when I think back, I have a picture of me from probably 1995, and I was so skinny. I thought I was looking so good. Like they say, I looked the bomb and my waist was snatched and all that. Like I probably was weighing like 80 pounds soaking wet, looking like I was on drugs. My hair was broke off. My skin was badly broke out. And I didn't even realize I looked that bad until I saw a picture of myself. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of living like this, depressed, unhappy, unhealthy. And I just left and never looked back. I left and never looked back.
Okay, and does anyone else want to jump in here about either their breaking point, what ultimately decided to make you leave, or if how the violence continued or escalated after you left, any stalking or anything like that?
I would.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
with my first marriage that lasted 9 years, with all the abuse that was going on, my breaking point was when he pulled the knife to my throat and said, I should kill you. I'm gonna kill you. I had never been so nervous in my life. And all I know is after doing that, he pulled the knife on me, he left, and I went into the kitchen and I grabbed every knife out the drawer, picked up my mattress, put every knife underneath, and sat on top of it. Out of my mind, I didn't know what I was gonna do, but I got a call from one of his best friends, which was our best friend. And he said, what's going on? And I said, he just pulled a knife on me. I'm scared. I'm crazy. I'm losing my mind. And so he came, and this is the first marriage, and that's the one I'll share about. And when he came, he took me and he put me up in a hotel. He made sure that he was nowhere around because he had his car, my husband's car. So, he knew he couldn't get to me. So he took me to a motel and he took me to safety. And in that relationship, I never looked back. I ran for my life. I was afraid, ducking, dodging cars, because I'm still living in the same city, which he calls his city. It's his city. Even to the point where I got myself together and everything. I got my own beauty salon. Man, he came up in there and tore up havoc, tore up all my stuff. I called the police, give them the license plate, address, everything, and they like, whatever. They didn't do anything, so, and this was years after. Almost 10 years after I had left him. He was still trying to cause havoc in my life, but I never went back. I stayed strong. He was mad. He said, how could you, what do you mean you're gonna be in business in my town? Why don't you just leave? Like, it was his town. I was like, really? And sometimes I wish I would have just left at the time, but no, I didn't have to leave anywhere. He didn't own the town. But yeah, it was a knife to my throat. Amongst all the craziness that went on for the whole 9 years. And I remember when I left, I had to switch jobs, and I'm in the salon before I bought my salon, and I'm in there and I get a dozen of roses. And the dozen of roses came and it said 9 years wasn't enough. And I said, I'd be damned. 9 years is enough of this. And I took the dozen of roses, and they were long stem in the box, and they had all them thorns on it. I just took it and just broke them in half and threw them in the trash. And I said, no, it is enough. It is enough. And, like I said, he tried to still get back with me and stuff like that. But once I'm done, I'm done. And it took 9 years for that relationship for me to be done. So that was the breaking point of that relationship. And the other two, they're more horrific, but we'll leave it there because we got other people to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to go before we move on to the next question? Yes.
I will. My breaking point was I'd been in that relationship. I'd left for 4 times. The 4th time was my last time. And what broke me there was he had held a gun on me in front of our daughter. And his words to me was, if you're going to act like a child, I'm going to treat you like one. And reminder, this was from us arguing over just not wanting to go out at night with 2 young kids on the bad side of town. So when he said that to me, I knew if something happened to me and he blew me away right there, he was going to do to my kids exactly what he was doing to me. And I told myself, I'm not going to let him do that to my kids. I'm going to get them out of this. And my daughter's seen everything. And I had to hear her screams. And to this day, I can hear her screaming. and banging on that door. And I will never let her have to go through something like that again.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, and our next question is, how can the police and the community help survivors when they're trying to leave an abusive relationship? Or basically how, like, what type of supports do you feel like the community can give survivors when they're trying to leave an abusive relationship?
I think one of the most important ways to support is to support without condition. We have an agency here that calls themselves a domestic violence agency, but there's so many conditions that the victims have to meet before they will even help them. No addiction, no evictions. Are you serious? I mean, that's craziness. So many of us survivors have these things because we're doing whatever we can to survive. And that's what it takes sometimes. And so we need to wrap our arms around these women and give them all the support that they need. It's more than just the counseling. They need legal support. They need legal help to get the restraining orders and help with the custody issues and the divorces. And they need the employment help and the job skills support and all of that, and helping them get their voice back and get back on their feet. And that's what I think is so important. And in a community where you don't have the police on the same page as the district attorney's office, as the DV agencies, as the other community leaders, it's chaos. So we have, in the community I live in, the Safe Haven of Tarrant County, which is the agency I was on the board for, we serve two major municipalities. One is Fort Worth and one is Arlington, Texas, which is right next door. We have a shelter in each one of the cities. They were actually two agencies that merged several years ago. And the difference between one police department and the other is like literally like night and day, And it's so difficult to be in a major city like Fort Worth, Texas, and not have the police support what you are doing, the work that you're doing. And that's what I do think it's important to have that, but to have all the services available without the conditions, I think is really, really important.
Thanks, Tracy. I wanted to say that I think education is so important. They need to be educated, and here in the area where I live at now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I got these phones, so I wasn't sure. Thank you. So they have advocates set up. They have offices in the police stations here in the central New York area where I live at. And so there's a whole system there. They have the advocate there. They have a counselor there. And the police, they are working together in this community, which is something that I'm not used to, because in the community I come from and where I used to live in Mount Vernon, New York, it's like 4 square miles big. It's very small and everybody knows everybody. So even when you reached out for help, before you even got home, they were calling where you live, calling your husband or your mother-in-law and telling that she came over here. She applied for order protection and blah, blah, blah. And that was the time when I got beat down the steps, all the way down the steps, because they found out. And it was just crazy because my mother-in-law is the one who told me where to go. I didn't even know where to go. I didn't even know it was such a thing. She said, you better go get an order protection, and that's where you go. Before I got home, someone in that office had already called home and told them what I did, or told her, and she in turn told her son, and he beat my behind for doing it. So, and it was such a small town that nobody would do anything. They knew who he was, they knew where he lived, but they would not arrest him. But education, though, for what I see is educating the police department and all the people that are involved in, the domestic violence, the courts and the lawyers, and everybody need to be educated about domestic violence, and so that we can all be on the same page, so that they can support us and help us, So that's all I wanted to share. Thanks.
Oh, and Tisha, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off of what both Donna and Tracy were saying. With the education, with the conditions, there needs to be a safe passage out. A safe passage out. All of these organizations need to be connected, because if you got somebody, a couple here and there don't help. One police station doing it and the other's not, it's not helping. Because if I'm in Houston, if I run to Fort Worth and Fort Worth is helping, but Houston doesn't have it set up, I got to come back into Houston to do everything. So these interconnected agencies partnering with those in the system, in the community, who are boots to the ground. I catch those calls. I'm on the boots on the ground, but I'm not high enough in the chain to do anything. And I'm not connected. The police don't call me. So when they're calling the domestic violence hotline, it's going to the bigger organizations that don't really know what these people need. And then they'll take them to the hospital, they'll take a report, and they'll put them in the shelter, but shelters are short term. Anyone who's suffered from domestic violence, typically it's layered. It's layered. So you need more than 60 days, 30 days, 90 days to get those skills, to get that healing, to get a plan in place, to get financing, to get all of this. But you run out of time when you're in these short-term places. And what happens is you end up with the next person. It might be a different person, same situation. So that's my suggestion, is to connect and be willing to sit with organizations like us who are doing the work, who know the system in and out, who knows the triggers, who knows the signs and what to look for. Because when a lot of them police coming in, they're not educated. The hospital's not educated. They're going off of, oh, we see fractured bones and we think, but then you go home. So that's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Ashley, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say also, a lot of times the police, they can look right at you. They see that you have those marks on you. They won't arrest anybody for 2 or 3 weeks. And your abuser's sitting there, and in that 2 to 3 weeks, they could come kill you. But they don't care. They don't see it from your eyes. They think it's just a situation where y'all got in an argument and he just made this one mistake. It's been happening for years and nobody does anything about it. And that's the problem. And giving somebody 2 years probation for something that could be attempted murder, we're giving too many people a slap on the wrist and not giving them what they need. And they act like it's going to help this person out by giving them a slap on the wrist. No, they need rehabilitation. They need some counseling. They need something. They need to know that they can't do that to another female or another male.
We saw so much that is wrong with the domestic violence situation recently with this case, Gabby Petito. And you can multiply her by 1,000. You know, she's Black, she's white, she's Indian, she's Mexican American, she's all of this. And she represents all of them. But there were so many things that went wrong with that. And you look at that one case and you could say, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. You were there, you had a conversation with her. She told you that he hurt her. And yet you want to arrest her? You determine her as the primary aggressor? That's just ridiculous. There was so much wrong with that case. And it just, we need to just, that's why what we are doing tonight is so important, to talk about it. We have to keep talking about it, and don't let anybody turn away from this because it's ugly and it's unpleasant. Yes, we know that. We have to continue to talk about that. And we need all of the cases. I wish that most of y'all are too young for this, but when I was a teenager and the Vietnam War was going on, every single night they would scroll the names of the soldiers that died that day or that week in Vietnam. That's what we need for domestic violence. It is that prevalent in our community that we need to be reminded on a daily basis what is happening to our women in this country. In their home, it's the most dangerous place for a woman to be, is in her home. That's horrific.
sharing 5 cases in a year isn't going to help. We need to share them all.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? I just want to add something on to what the community can do. One of the main reasons why survivors, victims go back to their abuser is because financially they have been abused. They don't have the money. The abuser has isolated them from their family, so they don't have family. So one thing that I am working on along with my team is developing a support system, safe homes in each state. There is someone in each state that a survivor can go to kind of underground, right? And so with that, of course, it takes education. But that is one of my main projects right now is networking with survivors and directors and CEOs that will open their door to victims and their children. We can say that the police, and in all honesty, I'm going to be honest, I think it has gotten to the point in society where police doesn't even care anymore. They're burnt out, they're overworked, and they're underpaid. And the response that I'm getting is overwhelmed. It's overwhelming. The people who are willing to help, that are able to help, and they just don't know what to do, right? And so if it's anything that anyone wants to be involved with as well, please reach out. But I do think that we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. So that is my 2 cents in all of this is networking is important. Educating our community is important. Asking for the help that we need from the community is important, and holding our community responsible. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to our, so we just have actually 3 more questions, and then we're going to wrap up here. The next question, there has been progress in the criminal justice system, but there is still obviously a very long way to go regarding domestic violence in the legal system. Legal reform is something that is truly needed in regards to domestic violence. What changes would you like to see, or what would you like to see as far as the legal system in regards to domestic violence?
I think something that's really important that we were able to change in our area from when I was working on the board for Safe Haven started at the very beginning of it at probation. So when an offender is arrested, there's a gap between jail time and they're released, and then there's a hearing in a few days, and then maybe there's a trial in 2 months. Well, in the meantime, that's when she gets killed. And so we were able to get the district attorney and the police department to use a different assessment instead of using what is called the Noble assessment, which is a risk assessment for a reoffense. And they were using the same one for someone who was breaking into cars, stealing things from a store, as they were for a domestic violence offender. And there's another one called ODARA, and it's from Ontario, Canada, and they use it specifically for domestic violence offenders. And now they were able to use that risk assessment on DV offenders, and most likely they are kept behind bars until the hearing so the judge can hear the evidence and make a decision if they're going to post bail or not. And it helped us to reduce our fatalities in half in 2 years' time. And that's a huge increase for us. Now, COVID came and changed all of that, but something as simple as that, and that takes what Amina was talking about, is that networking and having all of these community leaders coming together for it's called coordinated community response, where they all come together and talk about what's going on in the domestic violence community and helping the community do a better job of what they're doing.
So for myself, what I would like to see is I would also like to see strangulation be taken a little bit more seriously. There are some counties that have already, in some areas, in some states, I should say, that have enacted laws regarding that, but there are still a lot of states that have not. And I would like us to make more progress on that, because research does show that strangulation is a huge indicator of, non-fatal strangulation is a huge indicator of homicide. And so the next time, usually statistically, the victim is a homicide victim. So I would like strangulation to be taken more seriously as attempted murder, because that's exactly what it is. It's attempted murder. And a lot of times I've seen in a lot of cases, even with myself included, where the victim is informed them that, strangulation has happened, and still the abuser gets a slap on the wrist. And it's ridiculous, because like I said, the research proves that this is a big indicator. And so what are you basically saying to the abuser? So that the next time, just, strangle the victim until you kill them. So I feel like for me, that's where I really would like to see change happen.
If I just want to say, here in Virginia, they have for example, if somebody calls the police for a domestic violence incident and the police go, what they'll do is they will call an advocate to come to the scene. Now they will give the person, and this is like a twofold thing, they will give the victim a chance or the option to leave that day. If they ask them if they want to go to a hotel or if they want to be put up and stuff. Now, again, not blaming them, but they have to want to get out. Most of the time when the abuser gets arrested, the woman is like, no, I don't want him to go to jail and stuff like that. But they have a program called the Lethality Access Program. It's a form they go by to gauge the danger level. So here in Prince William County, they do use that. And some of the police have been trained for it, but I think they need to have more training so that when police come to a scene with Gabby Petito, for example, that woman was so distraught that they should have known something more was going on. And they actually said, if I recall on one of the news, that they saw him punching her. At that moment, he should have been arrested. And that was before she disappeared, before she was missing. Had he been in jail, she could have maybe gone back to her parents or whatever. But see, then we don't always know, because she was living with his parents, what was going on at her home that she didn't want to be there. Did his parents know they were going through stuff? But they should have seen how distraught she was, how she was victim blaming herself. Those are typical signs that should have let them know she's covering for him. She's covering for him. Yes, they made him go to the hotel, gave her the car keys so she could leave. But I guarantee you, once they left, she went back and met up with him. They should have been separated to a point where they would have known for sure she couldn't have got back to him that night. And in my heart, I feel like she would still be here had that happened.
I completely agree. Nikki, is there anything you wanted to add to that before we move on to our next question?
I think Trisha makes a really huge point. As far as typically whenever I had the police were called to the house, and then it's like, well, I don't want them to go to jail, and you feel remorseful, like this isn't what I want, but I also don't want to be beat, but I also don't want them to go to jail. It's like you're constantly fighting yourself. And then even when you don't accept the help right then and there, when the police are called, it's like they're like, oh, well, she's stupid, she won't get help, and then they don't want to help you, and it's a vicious cycle. And I feel as though, like, I'll never forget a cop one time, because we went to court and I told the police, or I told the judge, I was like, well, I was drunk and I don't remember what happened. And so the police officer pulled me into a room and he starts showing me all these photos of me like bleeding and beat up. And he's like, so you don't remember him doing this? You don't remember him doing that? And I started crying, and I remembered. I just didn't want him to go to jail. And I was like, I don't remember. I was really drunk, and I just really don't remember. And the cops looked at me and said, when he breaks your ribs and you end up in the hospital, don't call us next time and save us some time. And that was very discouraging as a victim, because no, I didn't want him to go to jail. He was the father of my kids. Did I want to get out of that situation? Did I want to continue to be beat? No. But when someone has brainwashed you in such a way where you can't think straight and you can't figure out what you do want or how to get out or how to get exactly what you want, victim blaming doesn't make it any better, or shaming them because they're in that situation doesn't make it any better either. So it's kind of like, you know, if your kid's crying, yelling at them is not going to make them stop. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a counterproductive way of treating the situation.
And this is why, because I hear this story, that same story so often, this is why I believe when the police are called out to domestic violence situations, they should go with an advocate. They should go with someone who knows what trauma bond is. They know what narcissism is. Because as we've said, so many people know police officers are not educated. They're not educated to what a trauma bond is. They don't know how to connect to the victim, right? And what's happening is these victims are being re-victimized by the police.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and this is something else that I'm so passionate about this. I get so emotional, but leaving it in the hands of the cops is not enough. It's not. Have someone on call. When you get these calls, you have someone to go to the victim, to the situation that is educated and aware of what it is that these victims are truly dealing with. Thank you, Nikki, for bringing that up.
Definitely. And now we move on to our second to last question of the night. Co-parenting can be very difficult for survivors, as abusers often use the legal system to try to re-victimize the survivor, especially if the abuser is a narcissist. They do not co-parent, they counter-parent. So what is your experience with co-parenting with an abuser, and what strategies or tips can you give victims for co-parenting?
Okay, can I take this one? You don't know.
I'll go behind you. I'll go behind you.
So first I want to start off with a book that I deem very important for anyone out there who wants to learn more about co-parenting. And so it's Co-Parenting with the Narcissist. It's an excellent book. Like the person who asked the question said, they don't co-parent, they counter-parent. And the advice that I would give to anyone out there who is trying to deal with this is it's really hard. It is really hard when you have children involved and you want them to have a relationship with the parent, but here's the truth of the matter. Okay. As much as we may want that parent to be a parent, the children are in a crossfire. They are used, they are abused, just like the mother or the father, and they are, they're victims as well. The healthy parent, if you will, is truly responsible for protecting the child. Right? Because we know that narcissism is an environmental disorder, right? So the more time that the child is truly spent with the narcissist, the more likely it is, unfortunately, that child may as well become one. Okay. And so again, my advice will be to have supervised visits, for one. If it is through the courts, ask for supervised visits. If you can, have someone that you trust in the home with you when the parent does come to visit, or it's ways to set boundaries. Let me say it like that. That's the most important thing. And co-parenting with a narcissist, you are co-parenting with a child, with a 5-year-old child. And boundaries is your biggest weapon. I tell my clients that you can jump into no contact and you can jump out of it, right? You set a time limit on the amount of time that the child gets to talk to the narcissist, because 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be about the child, it's going to be about you. Yeah. Right? Monitor these conversations. And so you set these strong boundaries and you do what you can to protect the mental health of your child.
Okay, and Tisha and then Donna, because I know you both wanted to jump in here. Go ahead, Tisha.
Okay. So obviously I don't have any little ones anymore. Mines are all legal. They're all legal. They're not grown, they're legal. But when I had to go through that process, one of the things that was very safe and helpful for me is having a third party. So no, my son's father wasn't a narcissist, but we used the daycare, family to drop off, pick up, communicate. Because there was a point in time in there where there was absolutely no communication between me and him while I healed, while we did our thing. But I'm not going to keep your child from you because that's not my place. That's your son. You have just as much right to him as I do, because we didn't work and we had a situation. That does not give me the right to take that from you. Yes, I'm going to do what's best for my child. And what was best for my child is not to deny him his father, but I'm not going to put myself in harm's way. Right. So those boundaries, I stood by them. Anytime he had something for my child, anytime he wanted to see, I got a call from a mutual person. Either he's scheduled to pick him up or drop him off at school, daycare, or family member's house. That's how that was done until it was safe. Until my son was of age where he could be like, yes, I want to go. No, I don't want to go, because that was healthy. That was healthy for me. So I'll just talk about just that one child in that one situation, because I had to deal with all my children. But that was what advice I would give, is to have a third party. And it doesn't, we all know the courts don't always work. We all know the police don't always work.
Nope.
So you have to have someone on your side that you trust to say, okay, I'll be willing to do this. I'll be willing to do this, whether it's the daycare worker, the school worker. My grandmother was mine. His brother was his. So we both had a person. So thank you.
Thank you. And then Donna, you wanted to go before we get into our final question. You wanted to.
Well, basically, Tisha said it all. That's exactly what I did. And that's what worked. I had 3 children, and I didn't stand in the middle of that. But at the same time, my children and I was in therapy and stuff. So I was taking care of what I can take care on my end. But I definitely didn't get in the way with that. So I don't really need to say much, because Tisha said it all for me. Thank you.
And also, yes, getting your kids into therapy as early as possible is vital to their mental health. And I'm not gonna say that long, but Donna, thank you so much for bringing that up, because this is traumatic for everyone involved, right? And so the sooner that we can get the kids into therapy and getting their feelings and their their emotions out, the more likely it is that they will live a healthier life.
Definitely. Thank you for adding that. And now we are on to our final question of the night. So a lot of you are just, first of all, we have an awesome, amazing panel tonight. So a lot of you are basically doing a lot out there in the to get the word out and ring the alarm about domestic violence. So this last final question is geared towards community outreach. What are you or your organization that you may represent or that you may have founded doing to help spread awareness, advocacy, and support for survivors? So this is basically also a chance for you to, discuss your platform. And once we do post this for the audience, we will have your information on there as well so that people can connect with you. So this is a chance to discuss your platform and what you or your organization are doing to help spread awareness and advocacy or support for survivors. So anyone who wants to take that question, go ahead.
I will go. My organization, Pure Heart Advocacy and Awareness, LLC. Again, I'm partnering with 2 shelters in Virginia to help the women and children for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I also am going to be setting out a curriculum to teach classes on domestic violence. I did a couple last year during COVID, but I'm working to get that set up again to have like some regular classes scheduled to teach, just talking on Facebook, doing a live, just sharing maybe weekly. I'm trying to get in, build my social media up to get into a habit of talking about different topics because people have so many questions. And it was a lady at an event, I think a week or so ago, who said she did not even know October was Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And to me, that in itself is sad because every woman should know, not just every woman, but every man, everyone should know. So what I also did was I put together these packets. My church had a life walk, but I also put together these packets. It had statistic information about domestic violence, about breast cancer, and childhood cancer. And I put the packets together, put some little trinkets in it, pencils, bracelets, and things like that, and made sure everybody in my church had one. So if anybody in my church could ask, what's domestic violence? They will be able to tell you. They will be able to tell you. And I have more of the packets put together. I'm not sure where I'm going to give them out at. I may put them in the bags I'm going to give out to the shelter. I don't know. But just however I can get the word out, awareness out, I'm going to do it because people really need to know and to be educated, because we should be able to, if you're in a room with somebody, all of us as survivors, all of us, we have organizations and businesses now. We should be able to look at somebody, whether we're in church or at the grocery store, and recognize if someone is going through something. I know for myself, I have developed that discernment to be able to tell just by looking at somebody if they're going through something. If you have a conversation, somebody's body language, their response to what you're saying, we need to pick up on those things. And we don't have to be, oh girl, you getting beat up at home, and we don't have to do all that. We need to let them know, I'm here if you need to talk about anything. We don't have to pinpoint violence, but if you need to talk about anything, I'm here for you. We have to be available for each other and for other women, for men. I talked to quite a few men at the Capitol when I did that downtown. Pastor Troy Jones, who is a survivor of domestic violence from his first marriage, has a men's group he started. We have to make things available for people. If you just need to call somebody and talk, but maybe you're not ready to get out because maybe you don't think you're in it, which most of us don't until we know. But if we can get the information out there, then people might say, maybe I am in a domestic violence relationship. Well, he cussed me out all the time. That's normal, but it's not right. That's not normal. So we have to get their mindsets changed to know the difference. They have to know the difference. And I know Lisa Alexander was supposed to be on here. I co-authored a book that she did, that we did together. And my story in that book was, what's love got to do with it? He used to love me. If you know what love is, then you know the difference. When you're treating different, when you're getting something that's not love, you're gonna know it. So again, it goes back to education and awareness. You have to be aware, and we have to stop ignoring the signs. So I'm gonna just keep talking, keep putting it out there, keep doing Facebook Lives and whatever I can to help people.
Okay, thank you. And before we close out, does anyone else want to share about their organization or what they're coaching, their book, or what they're doing?
Donna, I don't want to share about my organization, but what I do want to say is that as a hairstylist for 38 years, and after me being, a survivor of domestic violence, I've had many women in my chair, and I'm very sensitive to those that are being abused, even if they don't have a mark on their face. So I use where I style hair at. That's my place of advocacy. And like I said earlier, I have partnered with the YWCA here in the Mohawk Valley, and I support and I help there. I tell my story. Every chance that I get the opportunity, I share my story. When I feel led by the Spirit of the Most High, I share my story. And in that way, people feel more comfortable. If they are going through something, they feel more comfortable sharing. So that's really what I've done. I've done different little things with the YWCA. I donated some of my books to the shelters that we have, 2 shelters in this area for women of domestic violence. And I donated some of my books to them, and, nice little goodie packages, just, letting them know that, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and just something to help them to get through this hard time. So thanks for letting me share.
Really quick, I myself, with the women and men that I coach, a big part of the healing process is telling your story, right? Recycling your experience. And so I encourage my clients to become coaches, become a life coach, right? The difference between a person who has the experience, right? That's where the connection is. And so every chance you get, you tell your story, right? You educate, whether it's wearing a shirt for domestic violence or narcissism, using this platform of social media for something other than pictures, right? And so I use social media a lot to educate, to advocate. I am a walking testimony. I make time to speak in my groups. I make time to educate, and I feel like it is my thank you to the Most High by telling my story. So I thank every one of you. This is absolutely amazing. I want to do it again. Like, when is the next one? This is amazing. This is fulfilling.
I want to invite everybody to watch the movie. I hope you have a chance to see it. We're really proud of it. It's very authentic, and we've gotten some great reviews from DV advocates, and I'd love to hear from you. When you see it, let us know, reach out and tell me what your thoughts are and share it. I do hope that it helps us raise awareness, and I'm excited hoping that next year we can really get on the college campuses and start sharing this with the young people. That this is when they really need to hear this message, when they're starting to look for that life partner. So any of your support, we would love to follow us on social media. And I've so much enjoyed speaking with all of you. Amazing, amazing women. And I love, 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 love seeing how all of us survivors, whether you are just telling your story and that's what you're doing with this cause, or you started a nonprofit, or you're become a life coach, or all these amazing, wonderful things to really help us solve this issue. So thank you for all of your work.
And they can watch
and you as well.
NoOrdinaryLoveMovie.com. Okay.
NoOrdinaryLoveMovie.com. There are direct links to the film. It's on Amazon Prime. It's on iTunes, Google Play.
Okay.
I wanted to just say, so Survivors Overcoming Abusive Partners, because we're located in Hagerstown, Maryland, and we have reached out to the local police station and advised them, you know, we just gave them tips and advice. We donated bracelets for them to give on their domestic violence calls so that they can give to victims, like, you know, with the abuser not looking, because it has a domestic violence line. They can text the National Domestic Violence Line to get in touch with the advocate. And just, you know, and when we gave the bracelets to them, we let them know, just, you know, sometimes victims are not ready to leave, but you never know when they are going to be ready to leave, to try to educate them, because I think that that's important. I've also met with the new appointed mayor of Hagerstown, and we discussed how domestic violence was related to substance abuse, because a lot of victims, and including myself, because I was deep in my alcoholism, trying to cope with that domestic violence, and how that is a thing, and how we can try to prevent that. So those are some things that we've done in our local community to try and raise awareness and, you know, get this out there, because I think really where we need the information to be put out the most is in the justice system, with the police, you know, with the people who are in power, who make the laws. So that is something that we have been working on doing in our local community, and hopefully soon we'll be able, once COVID kind of gets it together, we'll be able to like go out into like, you know, DC and try to really get it out there as well. So that's something I just wanted to put out there. And I wanted to really commend those survivors who are on here who went through domestic violence back in like the 90s. Because back then it was real hush hush. At least now, you know, we're able to, you know, it's a thing where people are starting to come out and speak, but back then it really wasn't talked about. So I want to commend you guys for being on here and going through that and getting help in such a time where shelters and stuff like that was not even really a thing. So, thank you.
Definitely. And then Tisha, did you wanted to add anything about power, passion, and purpose? And then we'll have Ashley before we close.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. As I shared, this is my organization. We live, breathe, eat this. We do parent training. We do women empowerment groups. We do Safe Escape Out. We have wraparound care, as well as the fact that I partner with other local nonprofits that are in the same arena. So we're growing within Houston this platform where we're not just doing it alone. We have gotten Precinct 4, Precinct 6. So we're collaborating with the police. We have some advocacy programs that they are implementing. So we're trying our best to not be a standalone. So we have conferences, workshops, you name it, we have it. We have a food drive. One of our ladies, she's the supply lady. So we had a partnership with Walmart. So we are really trying to grow within because I'm in Harris County, and in 2020, it was 22,000 reported cases, which was almost double of Dallas. That was just the cases that were reported. So we're really taking the boots to the ground and doing all that we can. But I am available on social media. I also am a life coach as well. And I just encourage each and every last one of us to stay connected, because we never know. We never know who we can help, or I might not have nobody. I might need somebody in another state. I'll be like, oh, I got a call. I need you guys, help me. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to growing with you guys and really putting a stop to domestic violence. Thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Thank you for joining us. And Ashley, we're going to reach out to you before we close up. Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay. I would like to thank everyone who's allowed me to speak tonight. And I just want to say that tonight was the first night towards a step at me healing and trying to help others with the same situation that I've been through. So this is very a step towards putting my feet on the ground and helping other girls that are in my situation. I want to reach people with, you know, red flags and stuff that I missed, stuff that you and everybody else in this group missed. And I'm in the process of trying to start writing books and stuff about this situation. So it's all about getting our voices heard and letting people know that we're not going to back down. We're not going to let them take over us and take over our lives and ruin us. And this is about taking control back. And that's what I want to advocate for these women that have been silenced, that have been told that they're not anything. You can take control back, and it starts with you.
Thank you. And so now we are going to close. Just in closing, I just wanted to talk really quickly about, because NDV Healing and Support Incorporated, we also offer, we have our support group, which is, that's been going on for almost 2 years now. That support group, we meet on Saturdays, and that support group is empowerment sessions. We also have mental health professionals that join us during those sessions, and we have different topics during those sessions. And they also, the mental health professionals, when they join us, they go over those topics as well. So it's actually a support group / a learning session for the survivors that join us. So that is one of the things that NDV Healing does. We also do our annual virtual speak out, which is what we're doing right now. So that is another way we educate the community. We also have classes where we go over trauma bonding. And then we also have our Moms Going Back to School program, which is we help survivors once they're out of the abusive relationship. We help them work on completing their college education. And then last but not least, we also do things with the community. Like lastly, we did our food drive as well. So those are some of the things that NDV Healing and Support Incorporated does as well. So I'd like to thank all of a really huge thanks to all of our survivors that joined us on tonight. You guys are amazing women and doing amazing things and just amazing testimonies. So I really, really like to thank you guys for coming on here tonight. And this will be posted to our Facebook as well as YouTube and Instagram. So you'll have the opportunity to share with others, as well as we'll have your platform information on there as well for other people so they can connect with you and your resources as well. So thank you, ladies. You guys are amazing, and we really appreciate having you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.